Hi, my name is Ray, and today we're going to discuss Ecuador business culture. Next slide. So, business in Ecuador is similar to other Latin American countries. You can note where the highlands and coastal or lowlands are located on the map here. The coastal area is the tan color, and the highlands are the brown. So Ecuadorians are formal, and wearing a suit and tie is the norm in the highlands, while casual attire is common on the warmer coast and Amazon. When you meet up, presenting a business card with an English side and a Spanish side is a good idea. Next slide. Punctuality is very important and expected among Americans when going to Ecuador for business, so be on time to your meetings. Business meetings are conducted in offices or restaurants usually. Restaurant meetings are usually set up to become better acquainted with a potential business partner. Either way the meeting is set up, small talk usually precedes business discussions, so don't be afraid to chat up potential business partners. Next slide. Note this slide for common business phrases in Spanish. Business is usually conducted in Spanish, and efforts by Americans to speak Spanish are very much appreciated. Although interpreters are available for Americans who do not speak Spanish, please try to learn some simple phrases and don't worry too much about messing up on the pronunciation. Next slide. With regard to social courtesies, Ecuadorians are very polite and well-mannered. When meeting up, show them a smile as it will make the experience for both sides better and ease up the business meeting. Superiors are treated in a friendly but respectful way, and the use of a title before a name is common. So addressing people as doctor or engineer is a courtesy to take into consideration when speaking with business partners in Ecuador. Now I'm going to pass it to India. Next slide.
We can go to the next slide. Awesome. So Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory is a framework that was developed to distinguish between the different business cultures and just aspects of culture that are important for doing business between countries. So when looking at the Ecuador scores on the Hofstede cultural dimensions theory when compared to the US, we'll start with the power distance index. So Ecuador has a score of 78 and the US has a score of 40. So Ecuador's power distance index ranking is higher, which indicates that Ecuadorian people tend to believe that inequality between people in regards to power, finances, social hierarchy, and race is normal. And as a result, there are likely clear power distribution roles in a business setting. Moving on to individualism versus collectivism. So Ecuador has a score of 8, whereas the US has a score of 91, which is the biggest gap between the two scores for any of the cultural dimensions. So Ecuador has one of the lowest individualism scores in the world, and the US has a very high score. And this indicates a level of interdependence in Ecuadorian society, and combined with a high power distance index, it means that people tend to identify with and belong to a particular group, whether that be a social group, a racial group, or in a business setting. It tends to mean that people feel very strongly tied to their company and loyal to their coworkers. So moving on to uncertainty avoidance, Ecuador has a score of 67, whereas the US has a score of 46. So at a score of 67, Ecuador has a fairly low tolerance for ambiguity, and they take measures to have open and clear rules and norms. Religion and superstition are widely followed in the country, and there are clear laws and social norms and rules. And additionally, emotions tend to be expressed openly. Um, Conversely, the US has a higher tolerance for uncertainty, and as such, they may be less formal and have more uncertainty in business. So more negotiation tactics, more back and forth. Um, so that's something to keep in mind. Finally, uh, in terms of masculinity versus femininity, Ecuador has a score of 63 and the US has a score of 62, which is the score that's most similar between the two countries. At 62 and 63, the US and Ecuador are both considered masculine countries. So this means that both societies tend to be driven by competition and achievement and success, which both translate into how they may practice business. So this aspect of business culture is actually very similar between the two countries. This is a score, interestingly, which differentiates Ecuador from other Latin American countries. Ecuadorians tend to be very success oriented and maybe very competitive and driven in a business environment. The other two scores that are part of Hofstede's cultural dimension theory are long-term versus short-term orientation, and then indulgence versus restraint. And neither of these factors have any score currently on the Hofstede scale, so we don't have information about that. But I feel like we can gain a lot of understanding from the other dimensions that we do have information about. All right, I'll pass things on to Devrie.
Go
Got
for
it.
it.
In 2000, United States currency became legal tender in Ecuador. Ecuadorian coins have been produced in values equal to American coins and are simultaneously in circulation. The paper score has been eliminated. $1 is the equivalent to 25,000 ECS. Handshakes, I'm sorry. Business customs in Ecuador are similar to other Latin American countries. Ecuadorians are formal when engaged in business relations. The total population of Ecuador numbers approximately 14.5 million. Although Ecuadorians were heavily concentrated in Central Highland region a few decades ago, today's population is divided about equally between that area and the coastal lowlands.
Got it. It's okay. Deep breath.
Ecuador's people are ethnically mixed. The largest ethnic group are indigenous and Mestizo, mixed native South American and European. Although there are also European and African minorities, Spanish is the official language, while Quechua, the Ecuadorian dialect of Quechua, and other indigenous languages are also spoken. The major religion is Roman Catholicism. The division between the Mestizo population and the native population is acute, not only culturally, but also in the terms of concentration of economic and political power. It is fair to state that native population is marginalized in comparison with the Mestizos and Europeans. Cultural do's and taboos. A firm handshake with direct eye contact is the customary form of greeting. Men will need to wait for a woman to extend her hand first if she wants her hand shaken. Friends and relatives are often greet each other with a kiss and or a hug, called abrazo in Spanish. Men, however, do not usually hug other men. A pat on the shoulder is a sign of friendship. In rural areas, some men will touch their hat and nod instead of shaking hands. Generally, greetings among Latin Americans are lengthy endeavors involving both greetings and many inquiries about health, travels, relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Quick greetings are interpreted as disrespectful and thoughtless. As in all parts of Latin America, formality is the norm. Always address people by their title and their last name until invited to do otherwise. Yawning or coughing in public, especially while in conversation, is very rude. Always cover your mouth if you're yawning or coughing. Eating in public is also not advised. Note also that pointing one's finger may be perceived as an obscene gesture. Never stand with your hands on your hips, as this will be perceived as a sign of anger. While such aggressive stances are normal in North America, they do not translate well elsewhere. Of course, one should expect that the bodily space between individuals during conversation is likely to be far less than in North America. Try not to be too uncomfortable with this distinction. Sightseeing, culture, literature, dance, music, family, travel, all make excellent conversations. Try to be informed about the local culture in this life regard. Avoid discussing politics, however, especially Ecuador's relationship with Peru. Like other Latin Americans, Ecuadorians have a tradition of hospitality and may invite guests to their homes. Dinner is normally eaten between 7 and 9 p.m., but a dinner party will begin and end later. A dinner party will end soon after the meal, but a cocktail party may go on until 5 in the morning. One should not, however, drop in for an unscheduled visit at someone's home. Dining is formal, with dinners keeping wrists on the table and elbows off of the table. The fork should remain consistently in the left hand and the knife should be used in the right hand. The Ecuador Review of 2019. Now that you have a better understanding of Ecuador's culture and business culture, we hope you take into consideration.
All right, thanks for watching, guys. We're out.